Today I want to talk about communication, which is critical in trying to communicate our message and what we can do for a client to that client. So my wonderful girlfriend started playing me an audio book called Never Were by Neil Gaiman. And there's a couple in the book, Richard and Jessica, not Jessica Banville, the winner of one of our top slots. But their communication is absolutely terrible. They don't tell each other how they actually feel on a lot of occasions. And this happens very often in a lot of relationships where people just kind of hold back their feelings and they assume the outcome. You cannot do that. Yes, in your relationship, you should not do that. But you can absolutely not do that when it comes to sales. You don't want to hold back anything or not ask a question. You want to make sure you're asking questions, trying to get to the bottom of any situation because human nature says, and our experiences will tell us that our clients may hold back. This is what happens when someone says, I need to think it over. They're not telling you what's really going on. They're not telling you why. Can you just send me some information? They're basically blowing you off to an extent because for the most part, agents and salespeople in general don't ever ask further. They just assume, oh, yeah, okay, they don't really want the policy, or, oh, sure, they're really going to talk to their husband or wife. And we allow them to go. And we all know the numbers, what happens when we let someone go and think it over. Absence doesn't make the heart grow fonder in sales. So I want to go over a couple of communication things that are critical in really helping your client and getting to the bottom of anything. And, of course, getting across your message, which is most important. So it's obviously not what you say, it's how you say it, because people, especially if you've seen how people write text messages, people read tone into text messages, and that always cracks me up. I'm like, how could you read tone? And if you know me, you'll know I'm just going to tell you you're an idiot. I'm not going to imply it. I'm not going to be subtle. It's going to be obvious. So when people say, hey, are you mad because I got your tone? I'm like, there is no tone in a message, right? Unless you really communicate the right verbiage properly, right? So when we're on the phone with a client, things can be left up to chance. It's funny because I use the example of when someone will say to someone, so do you understand what I'm talking about? And they say, yeah, I totally get it. They may have no clue. They only think they understand. And the person saying, so do you understand? And taking that response of yes, as if it's factual and valid, they're also making an error because they're both just assuming everyone knows going forward what's going on. And we often do that at the end of a phone call. We think we have an understanding with a client when we do let them go, think it over, or talk to their spouse, or send that information. And that understanding is busted because when we call them back, they don't pick up the phone, or they maybe got a policy from someone else, or we never hear from them ever again. So the first thing I want to establish is the 3 learning styles of how people learn. You may be familiar with it, but you may not be incorporating it into your sales presentation as much as you should. Number 1 is visual. I think it's about 80% of people learn visually, meaning by seeing. This is why movies are still super popular. We go to a movie and we see this, amazing visual in front of us. But this is also how we learn, by watching other people, right? The visual aspect. And I'm not going to say that this is the only way a visual learner will learn, because I think when we get to the end of these 3, it's really a combination of all 3 that is the best way to learn, meaning visually. And then the second one here is orally, as in regarding the ear, right? Or auditory, they call it, meaning people need to hear it as opposed to reading it. People need to hear it told to them. Some people learn that way when a teacher is speaking in front of a class. They hear better than following along by reading. Some people follow along better by reading and learn better. Again, I think it's going to be a combination of all. This is why we do PowerPoint presentations that have pictures and the words in front of you, because what we're trying to do, anyone who does a PowerPoint, is cater to these types of learning individuals, right? The next one is kinesthetically. So depending on what you're doing, you have to have a tactile approach to it, right? If you were learning how to fix cars, listening and watching won't do it all for you. You would need to be able to dig in with a wrench and start taking things apart. Some people do learn that way. I believe it is the smallest percentage, but when you think back on anything you have learned, and you start to understand what type of learner you are. Is it mostly visual? Is it mostly oral? Is it a combination of all three? That's how you want to approach if there's anything you need to improve upon as a salesperson, what you need to learn and how you will be able to get it, meaning make sure you have all of these components that make you comfortable learning. Equally as important is how will you express this towards your clients, because when we get on the phone with a client, we don't know which type of learner they are, right? Because if you're on the phone with a visual learner and you're just talking to someone, it's probably not going to be as effective as if they have a visual. And that leads me to my next series of slides is web sharing, which is what we're doing. I am showing you on the computer all of these slides so that you can see it, hear it, and get it, hopefully a lot more easily and remember it more so going forward. When you use web sharing with a client, man, it's great because they get to see things. They get to legitimize your, it legitimizes you as a professional. That's what I should say. The client will now see you as a professional because you're walking them through legitimate websites, running the quotes. They get to see it and hear it at the same time. One of my favorite things ever for the last 20 years in sales is when I tell a client, grab a pen and a piece of paper. I want you to write down exactly what you're getting. Now, if you notice, as a side note, I haven't sold in a few years. It's still ingrained in me what I said, but I would say grab a pen and a piece of paper. I want you to write down exactly what you're getting. I am assuming the sale at this point. I'm not saying I want you to write down the benefits. I'm saying I want you to write down what you're getting. Now, by them grabbing a pen and writing it down, where I say copays 0, if we're talking about a Plan F with a med sub plan, I have them write down these bullet points. So what are they doing? They're actually doing something kinesthetically, and they're seeing it as they're writing it, and they're hearing me say it. So for me, over the last several years prior to insurance, that has been one of the most effective things to do, not only over the phone, but in person. You want the client, here, write this down. Because what you're doing is you're having them go through the act. So they're seeing all of this information in front of them, which, by the way, eliminates the can you send me information, right, as an objection, because they have all of these details in front of them. So it's a really great tool of allowing people to learn what these benefits are that they're getting, or at least that you're offering them. Next thing is to draw a picture. I've often had clients say, well, do me a favor, draw what your best scenario would look like in health. Like you would be what? Healthy, how much coverage would you have? Things like that. It's not something that you would use all the time, but I would get to the end of a presentation, and if I'm not moving forward for some reason, I say, well, do me a favor, paint a picture for me. And they don't have to actually do it with a pen and a piece of paper. I want them to describe what your ultimate scenario would be, to see what might be missing, because it gets them visualizing and thinking about the coverage they want, because maybe they're only focused on one thing. So sometimes you can tap into someone who does have let's say, a better imagination and can get tuned into them that way. The last thing is always sell the story so that people get the visual. I've talked to so many agents or clients that have stories about ending up in the emergency room. Anything like that, anything you encounter that any client has already told you or that you've experienced or that you've heard an agent tell you, you want to start to share those stories because people will see that as a visual. Not only that, it will hit on something that they don't want to happen, because remember, we're really selling peace of mind and a service that provides them with protection. So to start to get people to visualize and to learn and to communicate your message better, these are the components in a very light application. These are the components that really need to be hammered home to your clients so that they can pick up on this and make a decision when you're on that first meeting, whether it's a phone call or whether it's face-to-face. This will allow them to decide to buy. And that's what we all want to happen is, right, invest our time to close the sale, because that's what allows us to earn an income. Great quote to emphasize communication from George Bernard Shaw. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place, because we will hang up the phone with a client and think, oh yeah, they totally got it. I'm going to call them back and they're going to sign up. And we sell ourselves on that lie. Someone's getting sold on that phone call. It's either the client or the agent.